10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Man Up, back with my tag team partner. What's his name today? Vince Broso.
Listen, bro, you ought to know when you see the name who you're talking to. I pretty much am responsible for everything in professional wrestling that you love.
Cedric is not able to join us today, but we have a special guest. Well, you know what? We're not going to call this man a guest no more. He's part of the show. Y'all know who he is. We got Jason Davis. How you doing today, Mr. Jason?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. What's up, everybody? It's great to see you.
Hey, as y'all probably know, we discussed on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, we have changed the name from Free Fall. I almost forgot what it was just that fast. From Free Fall to Monthly Melee. Because we said, guess what? We just finna go all in and discuss how we feel about professional wrestling at the particular moment. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. What's going on, Facebook user? Got one right here. And I also got another one right here. Go ahead and click on StreamYard. Let StreamYard use you just so we can see who you are, so we can shout you out properly. With that being said, I know Cedric's not here to ring the bell, but let's go ahead and get started.
Ding, ding.
There we go. All righty. What's going on your mind right there, Mr. Jason? How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man.
What do you want to talk about today?
I'm really excited to talk about wrestling and the state of wrestling today and the different styles of wrestling and what's working and what isn't working. I'd love to get into that topic.
All righty. What's going on with you there, Mr. Vince Broso?
Well, no, but seriously, hey, if you did not catch Champions Belt Club on Monday, you need to go back and watch it. If you're not subscribed to it, you're already wrong. So go visit Jason's show from this past Monday. He had Smash Ventura on there. Great episode. If you don't know who Smash is, you're really going to like it. That was a very entertaining episode. So when you're done with this, you have homework. You
definitely want to check that dude. He's a crazy cat, man. Dude's got his own LJN figures. He's got his own he's got his own action figures. He's a marketing genius. So you definitely want to go check this dude out. Yeah.
All righty. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started because my tag team partner up there, Joey, put something in our group chat on Facebook, and it got got the wheels turning for a few people. You want to talk about that, Joey?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a debate about the styles in professional wrestling, and we all hear it all the time. Oh, just wrestling has evolved, and stuff like that, and this is what fans like now, and they don't like that, but there's always a counterpoint to that because we talk about it time and time again. If you go back to like Clash at the Castle, the match that easily stole that show was Sheamus and Gunther, right? And that's because they did something completely different. They did nothing like anybody else is doing on the card. Everybody else had very similar styles of matches, very similar presentations for the most part. And they went out there and like Joe Stacey said in the comments today, they had a brawl. Like they tore each other up. They made real contact. There was loud chops. There was hard hits. Those guys took it to each other and they left it all in the ring. And it drove the internet wrestling community crazy because they are, it really exposes the kind of style and what it could be and what could be done out there. And I feel like pro wrestling obviously needs to have a variety in what you present there. And when I mean variety, I don't just mean tag team, singles, women's match, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's not variety. Do something different in the ring. Do something different. And one of those things, like one of my favorite things is the technical wrestling. You talk about Bret Hart. You talk about Kurt Hennig. One of my all-time favorites was Brad Armstrong. Like I really feel like I think Brad was in the wrong era. I think if Brad brought that kind of wrestling to the ring now, it might be even better than it was when he was wrestling. There were so many great technical wrestlers, And there are some very great technical wrestlers out there. I just feel like it's not being presented in the highest way possible, and I think it could.
Okay. What'd you think there, Jason?
Yeah, I can counterpoint off that and say that, not counterpoint, but like build off that and say that I think it's where do I start? I got a lot of thoughts going all at one time. There's a couple of things. I don't want to go on too far of a tangent with this, but I think that part of the problem that we have in modern wrestling right now is the advent of mixed martial arts and submission grappling and that stuff. We kind of know the difference now between like a blood choke and a wind choke and a crush and these kind of things. Back in the day, you could wrap your arm around a guy's neck and just sort of like, goozle him, and we'd call that a blood choke or something like that. Or they'd say, "Oh, he's going to sleep," and they do the old arm drop sort of count out kind of thing. So I think the reason I bring that all up is because I think there's a reality that we understand now about submission wrestling and submission sort of moves and whatnot, that what really works and what doesn't work. The audience is a little better educated now than maybe they would have been back in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s specifically. And I haven't yet really seen wrestling sort of incorporate that realism or that sort of that identity into its technical wrestling in a way that works yet. Not yet. I think it's possible. I think they can, but I think that's part of the problem. I think a lot of times when guys try to incorporate MMA work and what we call technical wrestling or grappling work into the world of pro wrestling, it ends up looking really stiff and slow and sort of paced in a certain way to keep it safe, and it just doesn't. It loses its believability, and it loses its application a little bit. So it'd be really interesting. I'm kind of excited at the idea of maybe sometime, hopefully in the near future, somebody comes along that figures out how to sort of bring a little bit more of the sport sort of grappling style that sort of exists out there in the world into professional wrestling, and sort of figures out how to work it in a way that's safe, but also sort of brings some realism and some believability back into it again. I think that's kind of part of the problem. And then of course, there's this whole wave of sort of high spot, sort of non-psychology, sort of high work rate, strong athletes, not necessarily a strong base or understanding of the theater of wrestling. And that's its own probably separate conversation, but that's kind of killing the technical side of things as well. It's not just about the high spot, stuff that's happening all the time. It's also about the fact that the guys that are working a more mat-based style or more technical-based style don't themselves also understand the psychology of wrestling and how to build tension and how to build believability into what they're doing. So like working a leg, working an arm, working a specific body part, and sort of having some kind of a sort of a crescendo through that and making the ending sort of look believable. And we don't see that as much, unfortunately, as we used to see. So
me personally, I kind of got to piggyback on what Joey was saying earlier. I agree with you that I do like a certain style, but I guess I'm just used to today's stuff. Whether I like it or not, that's a whole nother topic. But today's stuff is a lot different from the Smash Mouth back in the day. And excuse me. And with that match that you brought up with Gunther and Sheamus, that kind of did remind me of that. It was Smash Mouth, hard hitting. You loved it, and you was on the edge of your seat because those two guys put it on a believable show, however you want to phrase that. And me personally, when I was watching it, like I said, it brought me back to the late 80s, early 90s. I guess you could say mid 90s as well. It all depends on how you look at it. But and that's what got that. I don't know. I guess I'm just used to today's stuff. you know, because I know they're not going to go back to all the old stuff that we love. And like you said in our chat, Joey, you said, you know, we the old heads, you know. And so when, you know, when you grow up and you're used to certain things, you know, this is what you know. Kind of like, you know, I guess like when my daughter, she's watching wrestling and it changes when she gets my age, she's going to like the stuff that she grew up with. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like I see everybody's point. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here. I see everybody's point, but at the same time, we all know it's not finna go back to, you know, to what it was. I mean, you might have some promotions that do, but for the most part, it's not going back to that. Mm-hmm. What you think there, Joey?
Well, let's go ahead and throw the graphic up, the Kurt Angle graphic. All right. Now, this is from Kurt Angle. somebody that, like, there you go. I just think the pro wrestling should go back to the way it was, start doing some chain wrestling and certain techniques to make it basic because that's the art of the sport. That's coming from a guy that when he came back a few years ago to WWE, people stopped giving a crap about the people on the show then.
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot now. And this is why I say, you say it's never going to go back to that. Well, in WWE, it might not, but that's a failure on anyone's part that doesn't realize that there's things that they're missing now. When you have to bring on the stars of the past to draw because the current stars don't draw, what does that tell you? It's right there in front of you.
I can't argue that.
But I would I'd go back to Kurt Angle. He's a perfect example. Like the guy's pedigree is impeccable in terms of athlete and sport, you know, in terms of wrestling base, in terms of wrestling knowledge, his explosiveness, his athleticism. He's probably one of the best athletes to come into pro wrestling and have success without question. But what made him special, I think, wasn't just the athleticism. It's part of it, but it was also the showmanship and the understanding the psychology of the work and understanding how to make, because that's a guy that could legitimately shoot on somebody and take them down on the mat if he had to, and he could double leg them, and he could do a lot of things with them if he wanted to. But he understood, he was smart enough to understand that that's not the point. He understood that you had to make it look good but keeps people safe, and he also understood that you had to be able to make yourself interesting to the audience. You had to be able to hold attention, hold focus. You had to make your moves clear. You had to make things readable, all that stuff that he understood. And so is it so much that the athleticism isn't there anymore, or that people don't know how to chain wrestle anymore? Or is it that they don't understand how chain wrestling can help build a match, and that they don't understand?
I think it's a combination. I think there's a lack of knowledge on chain wrestling because a lot of these guys, and this is why WWE is going back to hiring athletes. A lot of the guys they've had there over the years are not real athletes. They're not guys that came from sports. I mean, Seth Rollins is an exception, but because he's not an athlete. He's not a guy that was an athlete, you know, coming up or anything like that. You got a couple of those guys, but you look through the card there and Kurt, like you said, Kurt Angle got the wrestling business hard and fast because you got other. There you go. Yeah. So like, but you have. I mean, it obviously Kurt Angle's not the only one that's been able to do it because you got a lot of other ones that really were able to take, you know, wrestling holds, simple things, and draw incredible money with it. So the WWE has never been the biggest on that. That's why Hulk Hogan was the champion so long, and he didn't do a lot of wrestling holds or anything like that. But the times changed. At one point, that's why Bret Hart was on top for as long as he was. And, you know, the fans got tired of the Hulk Hogan shtick, and they wanted wrestling. And so it doesn't just go in one direction linearly forever. You know, there's things that they can put back in. There's things that they could do to draw more. There is a reason when Bill Goldberg comes back, he draws more money than 99% of the roster there. And it's his look. Let's be honest, because most of these guys look, I mean, I always see Adam Cole for reference. You know, like that the look alone right there draws money, and the look of other people does not. And then it's the intensity and the impact and the way he made the little bit of moves that he does, he makes look a certain way. And that's what sells. That's what packs the house for him. That's what does it for him. That's what does it for Brock Lesnar. That's what does it for all these guys that they continuously have to bring back in. If they're bringing these guys back in to do certain things, that's the dead giveaway that what they're doing is not working. And so it'd be really sad if WWE is that stubborn, or any wrestling company is that stubborn, that they can't realize what we are doing is not working. We have to get back to something. And I think WWE is realizing that, which is the reason they're hiring athletes. And probably for every 20 of those athletes they hire, they might find one with actual talent in the ring. Let's be honest. Well, that may or may not be true. They don't. The whole point is they don't do what sells.
Hey, this is how I'm gonna piggyback off this comment right here. I think they are going with what sells to a certain degree, and let me explain. Let me explain what I'm saying. They're going by what sells to to benefit a certain demographic, to appease certain people. You know what I mean? But is it the best thing business wise? Well, it's debatable. And what I'm saying is this here. For example, we all know this is a business to make money. That's hands down, no question. But when you try to do what sells, I'm thinking that's going to be putting over the priority of the product. You see what I'm saying? And that's not a good thing, if that makes sense. If y'all get what I'm trying to say there. You get what I'm saying, Jason?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So I also think when we lost Joey there. Maybe he'll come back on in a second. But also I bring this point up when he comes back. I also think this here, when you're doing what sells, you're going to end up ruining your product. And that's not a good thing. Now, and I'm not just talking about wrestling business, I'm talking about anything. You have to stick with what brought you to the dance. My grandfather used to always say, nothing beats the original. And what that basically is, what brought you there. Oh, there you go. He's back now. Yeah. What that basically means is nothing beats an original. You know what brought you there. Stick to it. What you did to get them is what you're going to do to keep them. And I'm talking about the fans, that is. Now, are you going to have to evolve from time to time? Yes. But don't evolve so much to where you could be potentially damaging your product, if that makes sense how I worded that. What you think, Joey?
I kind of missed part of it. I just got back. So I'm not even sure what all was just said there.
I actually think evolution is the key. I think it's not so much looking in the rearview mirror as it is looking ahead. I think it's figuring out what isn't working and taking components from both ends of it. I don't think it's just old school will fix it. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's because, again, we're looking at this product from a different set of eyes. We have a different perspective on a lot of this stuff now than we would have had in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. So I think there's a way to sort of bring believability back into the work and make it a more interesting product for a more wider range of ages and people. Right now, I mean, let's face it. What age range is WWE marketing to right now? Who are they writing for, and who are they producing for?
Kids.
Right. They're not trying to hit the 20 to 40-year-old market. They're really trying to hit the 10 to 16-year-old market. Really, that's what they're trying to hit. And whereas the NWA is branding towards adults and writing for adults, and that was always the case. Like when you compared the Crockett Promotions to WWE parallel at that time frame, Hulk Hogan was saying his prayers and eating his vitamins, and he was petting kids on the head, and Ric Flair was out whining and dining with women and limousines and jet flying son of a gun. it was a very different product, right? The NWA was very much adult focused, and WWF was very much about the kids. We all grew up. So it's we look back on it now, we go, man, screw WWF or WWE for not evolving with me and becoming an adult product, but it never really was an adult product. But I think they're missing the ball if they don't look for a way to make their product evolve with the times and bring some sensibility of believability and some sensibility of sport and athleticism and that to it, because I think a lot of other companies are going to go that way, and they may it's something I can't predict because I don't have a crystal ball, but 15 years from now, 20 years from now, they might regret that they didn't do that, because that might leave them in the dust if they don't evolve.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's a fine line how to do it, and I put it like this. There's a multi-billionaire company, and they've been around for since like 60 years now. So they're doing something. So, but at the end of the day, you don't. I don't know. You're teetering. I put it like that. What you finna say, Joey?
Oh yeah, they like to go play in the sandbox. That's what they're doing right now. They go get their blood money. Anyway,
yeah.
All right. Now, as I stated earlier, Joey had put something on our Facebook group. If y'all not part of our Facebook group, y'all need to join. Cheap plug. But Joey had put this in there, and here's were a couple of the comments. You want to go ahead and display this here, Joey?
Yeah, I mean, I put up a post like, who thinks technical wrestling just dead in 2023? I can't remember how I worded it, but or do you think it's something that could work? And Brandon Smith, who's actually a pretty young guy, said he'd love to see more of it. Joe Stacey wants the brawling and the mayhem. I think he was a big fan of the Gunther Sheamus type stuff. And then, of course, our good friend Mark Maggard talking about he's old school. He likes to see the grappling and less spots and finishers that don't finish. I'll tell you this. I was going to make a good point. There are wrestlers in the business right now that are making a living and have carved their niche out as great technical wrestlers. And you look at guys like Zack Sabre Jr., who is a freaking technical wizard. Guy does incredible things. And this is where it comes into, can you do submissions? Can you do technical wrestling? And can you make it entertaining? I think guys like him, Jonathan Gresham, I would say Deonna Purrazzo, who is pretty much my favorite great technical wrestler out there right now, the Impact Knockouts world champion. You don't often hear a lot of women get credit for being great technical wrestlers, but I would say Deonna's up there with the best of them right now. I haven't seen anybody else tell that good of stories in the ring right now in the business. And to think she was let go out of WWE's developmental system because she wasn't getting the sports entertainment right. But
can we go back for a sec on the technical thing? Why don't we actually sort of in the conversation here, before we sort of go any further with it, why don't we actually define what makes a good technical wrestler? Like, what is good technical wrestling? Maybe that's a good place to start in the conversation. What would you say, Joey?
Good knowledge of wrestling holds and being able to put them in the right spots, make them make sense in we're talking about chain wrestling. That comes down to, sometimes it's just as simple as, throwing somebody in a wrist lock, getting the wrist lock thrown back to you, stuff like that, single leg takedown. There's always that kind of chain wrestling that you can have. And there's such a beautiful art to it. And I think people really do enjoy that. And here's the thing. When you talked about the WWE, most of these kids that watch WWE, they'll buy anything you sell to them. You can put on whatever kind of match you can in the ring. They dictate that, because the casual WWE fan doesn't care. They're not the internet wrestling community. They don't get on there and bitch about the type of matches they're having and stuff like that. They go with whatever that gets put out there. So when it doesn't really, you can do this and they will buy it. And you might just attract the rest of the fans that you lost a long time ago in with it if you do something like that. But to me, yeah, when I think of great technical wrestling, it's not about just putting somebody in an arm bar. It's about knowing how to put it on, how to cinch it up, how to make it look painful, your opponent know how to sell, but knowing how to lock it in, and it kind of makes them sell.
I was definitely getting into that because I was talking with my wife the other day when we were watching. I can't think of the name of the match right now, but it was on Impact. And I was telling my wife, I said, people have to know how to give a move and take a move. Yeah. Because it'd be plenty of times somebody would give a move perfectly, but somebody would take it wrong. And sometimes vice versa. So you gotta know how to do all that stuff.
So that's cool. So we've established that a good technical wrestler can chain wrestle. They understand counters and application of holds. They understand how to sort of make things look believable and make it plausible that somebody is in danger from right. And there's a crescendo to a technical match, right? There's because it always starts on the feet. It always starts with a little bit of brawling, a little bit of fighting, a little bit of that to hedge for a position. It's all about finding position, right? It's about getting into a dominant position where you can apply holds, just like a real grappling match would be like. It's always about getting into position so that you can actually do what you want to do to the other guy and get them to tap or get them to submit. So the reality of that, the sort of understanding the tempo of it, how to build that sort of that through the match, and not to sort of, because it's harder to, in a lot of ways, it's maybe a little harder, a little more challenging to build drama into a match when half of it's on the ground or half of it's sort of technical, sort of like submission kind of work. I mean, even nowadays, when stuff stalls into a grappling match and an MMA match, fans are going boring, and they're shitting all over the fighters because they're trying to find position, right? Yeah. So I guess if we agree that that's sort of the art form of it, and you look back historically at the guys that were good at it, so like you mentioned Bret Hart, you mentioned Kurt Angle, of course. Ric Flair is often called one of the better technical wrestlers. Kurt Angle certainly falls into that category. What do you think? Kurt Hennig, yeah, Kurt Hennig, absolutely. What do you think was sort of the unifying or similar characteristics between these guys that they all did really well as a technical wrestler?
I think it's the psychology.
No, I was going to say they studied it. They paid attention. They knew, or maybe they got taught. I don't know how they found out, but it's like you know what spots, how to do this, how not to do that, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So,
right.
Yeah, they knew exactly what to do.
Bryan Danielson, somebody said.
I was just going to say, somebody said Bryan Danielson.
He just didn't have a lot of people to work with.
I think he was a great technical wrestler too.
He just didn't have people to work with. That was the problem. He didn't have technical wrestlers to work with.
Yeah. So my personal opinion is, I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse here, but my personal opinion is this. You know, I'm kind of on the fence because I understand and I don't understand, if that makes sense. But you know
what the two biggest things that have ruined wrestling what's happened ever since the Stone Cold Bret Hart WrestleMania match? Everyone sits in submissions holds way too long. You've always got this dramatic, somebody's got a damn submission hold in, and you've got time to sit there and then drag yourself over to the rope. Here's the difference. Go back to Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart at SummerSlam 91. What'd you notice that was very different about that match in the finish? As soon as Bret Hart sat down on that sharpshooter, what happened? Kurt went to screaming and tapping.
Yeah. That's what really happens. So when somebody puts a knee bar on you or puts an ankle lock on you, if you don't tap within the first 4 seconds, your knee gets ripped out. That's what happens. Reality.
Oh, wait a minute, fellas. I think this is going to end it right here. The first part of this comment.
I disagree. No.
But I think I think athleticism are part of it, but that's kind of what I was trying to get to early in the conversation with Kurt Angle. I think a lot of people sort of put a lot of his success. Get my words here. A lot of people put the credit of his successful career on his athleticism and his pedigree, and I think it was actually what makes him special and unique is that he understood the psychology. I think that's actually what made him a better technical wrestler, and I think that's what Bret Hart understood. Certainly, it's what Flair understood. Kurt Hennig, it's certainly what he understood. These guys really did. Like if you look at somebody like the Iron Sheik, rest in peace, who just passed today, that man had an that guy had an impeccable pedigree of wrestling. I mean, he coached the U.S. Olympic team.
He was an Olympian himself.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get better qualified as an amateur wrestler than that man was. But that wasn't how he was presented, and it wasn't his priority. And I wouldn't call the Sheik a technical wrestler. He really wasn't. He didn't really rely on that in his career. He relied more on gimmick and on sort of the way that, that sort of old style heel brawler type style. He was probably one of the most dangerous men in the locker room, wherever he went. But that wasn't his style. And also, I would argue maybe to a degree he didn't quite understand the psychology of technical wrestling in a pro wrestling context the way that some of these other people that we've talked about did. Doesn't mean he wasn't great. Doesn't mean he wasn't great. Just that just wasn't the way he worked. So.
Look at Bret Hart. He didn't have some amazing amateur background, but what's different about Bret Hart's training and Curt Hennig's training than these guys today? Bret Hart learned how to wrestle on a carpet floor in the dungeon. He didn't learn how to wrestle in the ring. He didn't learn how to jump off the ropes and stuff like that. He learned, by guys, real wrestlers, real guys like his dad, stretching him on the mat, teaching him how to when something hurts and how to make it look like it really hurts like that without killing the guy.
Right.
But they learned that. They just got on the ground and they learned how to wrestle. But it wasn't some NCAA level amateur background here.
But I think a lot of people miss that point with the Stu Hart story. So a lot of people, they talk all the time about the dungeon and the way he'd get guys down there and he'd have them screaming in the dungeon and he'd be slapping holds on them and that. Joey just hit it exactly a nail on the head. The reason he wasn't doing that because he was a sadist. He was doing it because they needed to understand what a hold really felt like and what it looked like and how long it took for it to hurt, to understand the psychology of how to present it in the ring and make it look believable and make it look real. And that's why a lot of the guys that came out of that Canadian territory were such great technical wrestlers, because he was putting them on the basement floor and stretching them. And they understood what it should look like and how it should feel. So when they presented it in the real ring, it looked believable. Everything that they did looked real.
Same thing with Vern Gagne teaching Ric Flair and Curt Hennig.
Exactly the same. That old school mentality of stretching people. Yeah, stretching them. And that's why I was saying, that's exactly what I was saying earlier in the conversation. I think in a funny way, the way forward, I think, is not necessarily just old way, but also new way, because I think we have to look at where fighting has evolved and grappling has evolved and all of that stuff. And we have to figure out how to apply that in the ring in a way that's believable and people don't get their knees torn out. Yeah. I think that's where we need to go. If we want technical wrestling to be a viable, believable commodity in contemporary wrestling, I kind of think that's where we need to go.
Yeah. The one thing Kurt Angle did well with like the ankle lock submission was he'd play with him a little bit, but when it was actually time for him to finish him, he'd wrap his legs around it and kind of cinch in, and then you couldn't drag his 200 and something pound. Okay, we'll get into that, but
got another one for y'all.
All right.
Submission holds. I mean, shows are missing the effect.
I don't think Chris Benoit was one of the greatest technical wrestlers. I don't. I think he was high impact. I think he basically took the Dynamite Kid blueprint and did it a little bit different, but for the most part the same.
In his time, one of the most intense wrestlers, without question.
I don't think he was that great of a technical wrestler when you get down to it. Like he was
good.
Explosive.
He was explosive.
High impact stuff.
Yeah, he was explosive. Really explosive.
That's what it came down to. I don't think you can compare a guy like Benoit to a guy like Brad Armstrong, for instance, or how about Ricky the Dragon Steamboat being a great technical wrestler too. The one thing, and my other thing was, remember what I said about submissions and staying in them too long and making them not believable? What's up with the long 2 count on every deadgum pin attempt you see, like in wrestling? It's like that is the stupidest crap. One thing I loved about like Ricky Steamboat matches, let's go back to him and Savage, and there was a lot of great technical wrestling in that match, a lot of great storytelling, a lot of great drama, a lot of great everything in it. which is why everybody loves it so much. But the finish of that match was very much out of Ricky's play, out of Steamboat's playbook, because it had a lot of near falls. But what made it great is the cover, kick out at 1 or before 1, really fast kickouts. Like, first off, there's no reason in the first minute of the match that a pin should have you down for 2.5. And then second, there's no reason in a dang match to have somebody already diving out to the floor within 2 minutes of the bell. Like, and that goes back to the psychology, but again, it kills the suspense of a pin attempt when you do it that way every time. It kills the suspense of getting a submission hold on. How about not putting the submission hold on 8 times and just trying to get it on and having your opponent escape, so when you do get it on, it means something? Because that's the way a fight works. You don't get a rear naked choke on somebody 6 times and they escape it every time, and then you get the big one on later. Once you get a rear naked choke on somebody and you've got it, it's over. There's no.
You got to get them to the mat first, or you got to get them in a position to apply it, and then you have to have them tired enough and gassed enough to be able to apply it. So like, there's room in modern fighting and modern wrestling to bring the psychology of what we see actually happening into the ring and make it more dramatically interesting. There's room for it if people would just grab onto it and start doing it. It's there. Like, the blueprint's there. It's there, and we know what worked before, so it's not like we don't have a blueprint of what looked believable and what was realistic before.
It makes no sense to me. And NXT is supposed to be this state-of-the-art wrestling school, or supposedly sports entertainment school, where they teach this stuff at, but you don't see it. And that's kind of what's missing is teach that. You teach them the fundamentals, you teach them all that stuff, but when you get into the advanced classes in wrestling training, that's when you ought to really say, like, okay, today we're not even going to be in the ring. We're going to come over here on this rug, and you're going to leave here in pain, because we're going to really work holds, and we're going to really, that's where you ought to go. Like, is learning that kind of stuff, is really learning, how to slow it down. The whole match doesn't need to be slow and boring. I will never tell you to go back to the early 80s WWE style of bear hugs, rest holds for 5 minutes and stuff like that. That is not what I mean. But if you look at especially, okay. What NXT are you referring to? The one that just looked like Ring of Honor? Because that's what NXT Black and Gold was just everybody from Ring of Honor. Now they're all in AEW, right? So like, but again, the point is, there are wrestlers out there.
It's Impact and Ring of Honor, really, both.
Yeah, you're right. Impact's got a bunch of them now too. Like a lot of the Ring of Honor guys.
They are.
Yeah, they're and I feel like Impact's the best example of a company that's really trying to bring variety to the card and have different presentations. For the love of God, you got PCO out there, and you know what you're doing with PCO. You know what he's going to give you. But that's, you don't have every match be a PCO match.
No, it's not bad to have a few of those. You need an Abdullah the Butcher match. You need those matches. You need
Jack back in the day.
Yeah, you need those matches. You need an Andre. You need an Abdullah the Butcher. You need those attraction matches. You do Missing Link, whatever. You need those matches to sort of sensationalize it. But then those aren't the matches that hold people. Like, that'll get you in the door, but you're not going to come back for the next one if the Missing Link isn't there. You're not coming back for that. You're coming back because you're invested in one of the matches on the card from one of the guys in the territory that did something dramatic enough and interesting enough and made you either hate them or love them enough to come back and put your money down and come back and see that show again. And
what about Dean Malenko in the cruiserweight division? They mentioned the cruiserweights before. You had a guy like that was a true technical master, like in the ring with a guy like Rey Mysterio. And what made that match so amazing was the styles clash. It's Rey doing the lucha and Dean doing the technical wrestling, and then them having to sell it for each other.
And they were smart in how they were smart in how they booked it, because they booked the matches in a way where it was Dean trying to impose his will and get him to the ground, and it was Ray trying to stay up and move. And so when they did their matches, that the whole pace of the match and the whole booking of the match was around trying to get, again, coming back to position. Who's gonna win position in this match and get the person where they need them to be to do their game. And that's more of a modern, contemporary sort of MMA sensibility or a fighting sensibility, and it worked brilliantly. It really did work brilliant. That's not, folks, that's not a new thing. Like, if you go back to Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask in Japan and New Japan Pro Wrestling, that stuff was happening in the 70s and early 80s as well.
Mm-hmm.
That blueprints have been around for a long time. It's there.
Okay, guys, I want to go on to this comment right here. This is kind of what we've been talking about. You know, it's, can you work? Do you have somebody to work with? Like we said, Bryan Danielson didn't have nobody to work with in WWE before he went on somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have somebody you can work with? Yeah, your styles might be different, but can y'all mesh them together just good enough to where, you know what I'm saying, it's believable? You know what I mean? Because, yeah, you got this ground and pound guy trying to catch this guy that's flying around everywhere, and you're like, once I catch him, I'm going to get him. You know, that's in your head. Once you catch him, you're going to just beat the crap out of him. Or is this guy just going to have this high-flying style that just come around, just bam, bam, you know? It was one of those things to where when they made it work. I'm going to put it like that. They made it work, and they knew exactly what to do. And going by with Rey Mysterio's background, he had that education, that knowledge. That's the word I was looking for. He had that knowledge on how to do certain things, when to do it. And we all knew, because of his size, we expected that from him. Now, your opinion, whether he did it too much or not enough or whatever, but he made it to where it got him where he is today. And he knew if he didn't have that knowledge or that background in it, he probably would not be where he's at right now. I mean, he got some knowledge from Rey Mysterio Sr.
Well, he got a lot of that. I mean, we're talking about Ray and Dean here. He got a lot of the knowledge from Dean Malenko.
I was just going to say.
I was trying to think of the other person that he was.
But at the age he was, and Ray was a pretty experienced wrestler by the time you get to WCW. But in terms of years in the ring and experience, Dean was obviously the senior player in that match. I would say Dean had a lot to do, and so did Eddie Guerrero have a lot to do with Ray's success in WCW and the way that his matches were booked and the way that they were paced and the way they were laid out. And I think Conan gets some credit for that as well. I think Conan and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko all had a hand in Ray being used properly in the context of what his movesets were and his skill sets were. So
a guy like Dean in those matches. You know, with Ray and Dean had many matches in WCW, but in those matches, you can guarantee Dean was running the matches in the ring, because again, he had been in most time. He was the heel, and that's another part of it. That's part of the psychology aspect. If Dean Malenko wasn't a heel, would that match have worked? No, because the whole idea is Ray, the babyface, doing the aerial stuff, but when Dean would cut him off and ground him and slow the pace down, you have to be a heel to make that work, because the fans are going to want to boo you for that kind of stuff. But in the context of being a heel and again, like Jason said, imposing your will, it all makes sense and fits into it like a glove. Perfectly. If you don't have those pieces aligned right, you don't have people in the right roles. And that's part of the problem, too, in WWE now.
And a lot of time, the psychology of the matches, we always get into talking about it being a spot fest. It's not just that it's a spot fest. It's that it's a promo fest. And what I mean by that is it's everybody getting their stuff in so that and nothing's tied together and there's no jockeying. It's just, okay, I'm going to get my Canadian Destroyer in, and I want to get my DDT through the table in, and I want to get my blah, 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 and whatever the hell else crazy thing I'm going to get in, because I want more people to see how incredibly athletic and impressive I am. Who gives a shit if it has anything to do with the psychology of the match or tells a story? I just want to make sure I get my stuff in. And that's what a lot of the matches are. But what Dean Ray was smart enough to listen to Dean. Ray was smart enough to let Dean lead that and build that psychology into the match and make it mean something and have that jockeying for position in place. And that's why a lot of those matches are considered some of the better technical matches of the 90s. You know, when you think back to the Halloween Havoc match with Guerrero and Ray, that's still considered one of the better technical matches in that time period. And again, that's Guerrero leading him through and taking Eddie Ray's strengths and amplifying them and making it a more interesting match. It's I think great technical wrestling is about the athleticism, and it is about the knowledge of the chain holds, and it is about all of that stuff. But I think what's really, really, really important about the technique, and I think that's why it suffers a little bit in contemporary context, is because of the we talked before about psychology sort of missing in wrestling, but I think it really hurts technical wrestling more than any other style. I think it really, if you don't have psychology, you can't hold an audience's attention in modern day without some psychology in a technical match. Because like I was saying when Joey popped off for a second, if you go into an MMA match now and they're on the ground for more than 2 minutes, people are yelling boring. And they're working like if you understand what they're doing, it's great. It's great fighting, but nobody wants to watch two guys jockey for position on the ground and wiggle around and try to find a dominant position. They're yelling boring, and the refs are standing them up and screwing up. Somebody might have been working for 3 minutes to try to get position, and the ref stands them up because the crowd's yelling boring. You got to have some psychology and drama built into that, or they're just not going to be interested in it. And I think that hurts technical wrestling. I think that's part of the problem.
So I got a question. Do y'all think it's hurting the business, and why? We got a few more minutes left. I want to start with Jason.
Ooh, wow, that's a big open-ended thing. What do I think is hurting the business? The fact that it's a corporate entity doesn't help because it really ties your hands on what you can say and how you say it. I think that's part of it. I mean, this is a business that's based in violence or the portrayal of violence, and so I think the corporate aspect of it is difficult. But I understand it's a business. I understand that's not going to change. I think that the athleticism has been over prioritized a little bit in some ways. Like, I think you need good athletes. Don't get me wrong. I think you need good athletes, but I think the explosiveness and the athleticism and the physical bar is more important or more prioritized than some of the theatrical aspects of wrestling that we've been talking about today. And I think, I know they have their promo classes, and I know they have their workshops, and they have all that kind of stuff. But I think the people that invest, the wrestlers that invest in their acting work and their character work and the psychology of what they're telling and how they're doing it, that can match that with the athleticism and the physical work that they're doing. Because let's face it, like the stuff that people can do nowadays is off the charts better than what they could do in the 1940s. Like, it just is. Like, they're just better athletes now. They are. But it doesn't really matter. Like, nobody cares that they're better athletes because nobody believes anything they're doing. So I don't know. I just think if they could probably, I'm not sure how they run their camps. I'm not sure how they run their training centers. I'm not sure what they're doing out there, but man, hire some acting coaches, dudes. like work with some people that can teach you how to tell a story. Make these dudes read some monologues and take some acting classes and figure out how to take that amazing athleticism and athletics and actually tell a story with it, rather than just see who can jump the highest or lift the most weight.
All right, you too, Joey. What you think is ruining the business, and why?
WWE. I'm being straight and honest. I think because every time, and I mean this, because I think when you're a WWE fan, you believe that's just how wrestling is. And I think that they've branded it so much to the point where everybody just thinks wrestling and WWE are the same thing. And I disagree with that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I disagree with the fact that you have to be an actor to be a wrestler. But what I'm going to say is, I think that anytime anybody tries to do anything else other than what WWE is doing, the internet wrestling community shits on it. Overall, I think that's just become an expectation of is these guys are doing it right, and everybody else is freaking doing it wrong. And I think they've hurt the business more than anything. I think having the writers they do is part of that. And I think the worst thing that they do is write the scripts for them and shit, because it's not believable. I watched a clip today of Baron Corbin on NXT, and he was very much reciting a scripted promo while the crowd was doing their thing. And there was no you could just tell there was no ability on his part to feel the crowd out, to know how to maybe make a slight left when instead of going right the whole time. And that's part of what's missing is Ric Flair would say it. A lot of the greats would say when they can't figure out exactly what they're going to until they get out there, until they feel the crowd and they know what they're doing.
And I'm glad you said that, because I want to make that clear. When I talk about acting, I'm not talking about learning how to read a script better. I'm talking about learning how to read a room. A good actor or a well-trained actor isn't somebody that just learns how to recite lines. A good actor is somebody that can go into a performance situation, feel the crowd, and make adjustments based on what they're getting back from the crowd. And that's actually what pro wrestlers do in the ring. The people that have been historically great at it, they're just stealing from stage work. That's just acting. That's like real acting. What they understand how to sort of work the room based on what the room is giving them.
I'll give you a perfect example. In my time as a pro wrestling announcer, I did a lot of TV commercial acting, and I was able to do it because as an announcer and somebody that trained a lot of people, I had to do promos myself and stuff like that in wrestling. Mm-hmm. The best about obviously being a commercial actor is a lot different from being a television actor, a theater actor, a movie actor, anything like that. Commercials is just really spitting a few lines, but isn't that kind of what promos are? So I was able to get something fed to me in my ear, not on paper, and I was able to spit it back out in such a way that got me booked and used a lot as a TV commercial actor. Just because if you're in front of a camera as like and thank you for that, and as an announcer, you have to be able to just ad lib, make crap up, and just start spitting it out. It's not like, the rest of the wrestling business is not like WWE where somebody's in your ear telling you, talk about this on the commercial, lead into this, do that, stuff like that. The old school announcers, the Gordon Solys and stuff like that, they just called it out there. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. All the best promos are like that. And when you have somebody that is just reading off a scripted promo that they're memorizing, that's the kind of shit that's killing the business.
I gotta kind of agree with that part right there. It's the promos. Today's promos, most of them, I'm gonna put it like that, are not believable. And if it's not believable, how you gonna want somebody to tune into your product? To me, that's what's killing. That's what's killing wrestling to me. Is most of today's promos,
and they don't back it up in the ring either.
Hey, that's another one. But I think if you can't sell it to me, if you can't make me want to watch you buy this product, whatever the case is, why would I want to do it? I'm not. When I spend my money on something, I want to spend my money on something that I'm really into, and you have to make somebody be into it, because I can go over here and buy this over there instead of this over there, because this over here is what's they'll saying, hey, this is what this can do, blah, 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 XYZ. But this over here just saying, hey, this is what I got. Do you like what it look like or not? You know what I'm saying? That's not selling nothing to me.
Right. So, but it's also about it's the promo, but it also extends into the match itself and also just the general booking in general, because Joey and I can stand backstage and Joey can tell me, you do this, do an arm drag, blah, 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 backflip, blah, 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 this, and then we're going to build to this. Okay. We do that in the ring. If they don't react, should we keep following that plan, or should we just start calling an audible in the ring and figure out what? Because maybe they popped at something we did earlier that we didn't think they were going to pop on, and they popped on it. but that thing we built to midway through the match, they don't give a shit about, and they didn't even, they're yawning while we're doing it. Should we just follow through and keep doing that, or should we call an audible in the ring and build off of what actually right and go in a different
to
direction?
The same finish.
Yeah, well, see, I want to piggyback off of what our other tag team partner Cedric said one time when he was talking about the Hogan versus Rock match.
Yes,
they got to the point where they were booing the Rock because they wanted Hogan, you know what I'm saying, to hit his spots, and they realized that. I mean, I know I'm not talking about the promo. I'm talking about the match itself.
No,
I'm trying to.
It's the same thing, though.
Hogan called that audible in the ring.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Like, but that's the point. That's the point. In a corporate environment, they don't trust the performers to make the calls in the moment. And as long as it remains a corporate environment, and it's going to, that's a problem. That's the reality of it. These corporations are not going to trust performers to make these kind of decisions out there. If they build it into the culture of the business that this is like theater, that it is like performing, and that you got to let your actors go out there and do their job, and you got to let them perform, then you're going to see better matches and you're going to see better promos. Because a lot of it is people making audible calls in the moment and saying, okay, that didn't go over. What do we need to do to make this work? And it ties into the matches as much as it is the promos. So
yeah, and that's what the good ones do. If you put The Rock and Hulk Hogan, if you put that in today's wrestling with just as experienced wrestlers today, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have called that audible and given the fans that Hulkamania moment where he hulked up and he did the thing and Hogan turned babyface in the match essentially, and we got the handshake finish at the end. They still got to the finish. Obviously, The Rock was winning. That was the plan. But the point was they had to call an audible to pull that crowd back in and make them crazy. And they did it. They managed to get it back there. And at the end of the day, was it exactly what they thought was going to happen? No. But in today's WWE, they just would have went with the plan. And it would have went over like a fart in church. That's case in point, Roman and Cody.
That's the fact. I mean, that's just a fact.
That shit the bed hard there at WrestleMania.
Yep.
So not saying who should have won, but damn, the match that they had was not what people wanted, period.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to tie them in together, because, you know, you got to know when to do this, when not to. Do you need to switch it up a tad or a lot? Do you need to just completely do a 360? You know what? You know, so that's what I think was hurting the business is promo. That's my personal opinion on that one. All righty, guys, we came to the end of the hour. This was a great conversation. I know we don't have the bell right now to ring, but ding, ding, you know. But this was a great conversation, you know, about how we feel about the wrestling business right now, exactly what was on our mind at the moment. Before we get up out of here, Jason, you got anything you want to say?
Yeah, man, come check us out at Champions Belt Club over there. We have daily trivia, daily events, and it's a really great community. We're having a great time in there, and pretty drama free, which I love. And and we've got a podcast we just recently launched that we run every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, called really simply Champions Belt Club Podcast. We like to keep it simple and literal. Yeah, check us out. We're having a good time. So.
And they're doing something very, very unique, different, and that's what I want to put them over to. Is there's a lot of podcasts out there, and a lot of them are doing the exact same stuff. And if you check out Bells and Belts, if you check out Champions Belt Club, you're going to get something a little different. There's nothing Jason and Tony are doing that we're doing, and we're not doing anything they're doing. We're bringing something different to the table. So I promise you're going to be entertained watching it all. So
yes. I'll go ahead and check out Jason on Champions of Belt Club. All righty, Joey, what can they do for us on Facebook?
Well, we'd love it. We have a group over there called Bells and Belts. We'd love it if you join it there, and we do release certain information. Oh, we forgot to tell about some of our big upcoming announcements. We got to throw up there real quick.
Thank you.
Go ahead, throw the graphic up for next week's show with Tony Presley. This is going to be our first show with an actual he is a retired professional wrestler and promoter of New South Wrestling out of Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, I do believe. Do you have the graphic For
no.
Scott Storm? Thought we crap.
I thought I did, but
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. And then also on this is one of our big announcements. We have not told anybody on Facebook or YouTube. On Sunday, June 25th, we will have one half of the NWA United States Tag Team Champions, the Legacy AJ Kazana, will be on board with us in a special spotlight episode. If you may have seen him on NWA, again, one half of the Country Gentlemen with Anthony Andrews. They were just in the Crockett Cup, as well as retained the U.S. Tag Team titles in a U.S. Tag Title Gauntlet on the Sunday show of the Crockett Cup. So if you're why we teased it that we were going to start getting some wrestlers on here. Join us next week right here, June 14th, for Tony Presley, formerly known as Scott Storm, professional wrestler, longtime wrestler in the NWA throughout the 2000s and the very late 90s. And he is the promoter of New South Wrestling in Kentucky. Check out New South. That's not New South Pro Wrestling with the giant belt. It's just New South Wrestling. And go ahead and find them. They have a page on there too. So those are some of our big upcoming events. But stay tuned because we got a lot of things coming. And again, join our group here on Facebook, Bells and Belts, to keep up with everything that's going on.
And also, too, after you go to Facebook, go on over to YouTube. So that way, anything we do on YouTube, you will see it if you hit like and subscribe and hit the all notifications. That means that whenever we do anything, whether it's a 1 hour video like this, whether it's a short clip, whether it's like a 5-10 minute video, whatever, you will see it. Now, with that being said, for Jason, Joey, a.k.a. Vince Broso, I know I just mispronounced that. I am your boy, Man Up, Mr. Wrestling Sub-Zero. I had to put my two favorite things together. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Y'all have a great one. Y'all stay safe out there now.